My brother asked me to confess before he would let the attorney finish reading our mother's will. Not to stealing money, not to forging her signature, to pressuring a dying woman until she was afraid not to change her own will. Michael stood beside the fireplace holding a medical report signed by Claire Bennett, my mother's hospice nurse. Admit she changed the will because she was afraid of you, he said. Then, we can settle this without destroying what's left of the family. Everyone around my mother's dining table watched me. Our aunt, her pastor, two neighbors, a representative from the bank. The attorney paused with the will still open in her hands. I felt the old response rising inside me, the urge to apologize first and explain later. Then Claire entered carrying my mother's wooden recipe box. Michael's face hardened. This is a private family matter. Claire set the box beside the will. It stopped being private when you used my mistake as evidence. The attorney looked at her. What mistake? Claire did not answer. Instead, she removed a recipe card and placed it face down in front of me. Michael reached for it. I covered the card with my palm. It was a small movement, but he stared at me as though I had struck him. Daniel, he warned, if you open that box, everyone here will learn what our mother believed you were capable of. Claire's voice shook. No, they'll learn what she believed you were capable of. The bank representative leaned forward. Michael looked toward him instead of me. That was when I understood this was not only about the house. I turned over the card. I recognized my mother's handwriting before I understood the words. A date, a check number, then one sentence beneath the recipe. If Michael says I was confused, ask Claire why. Claire closed her eyes. The medical report beside Michael still carried her signature. And suddenly, the only person who could clear my name was also the person who had helped condemn me. Rebecca Shaw, our mother's attorney, closed the will. The sound was quiet, but it ended every conversation in the room. No one touches the box, she said. Michael gave a short laugh. Then leaving them alone should be easy. She moved the box away from both of us and asked Thomas Reed, the bank representative, to photograph the card where it lay. Thomas took out his phone. Michael stepped between him and the table. You're here to discuss the mortgage, not participate in a family dispute. Thomas lowered the phone without putting it away. There is no mortgage on this property. Something tightened near Michael's mouth. Exactly. It was too quick. Too smooth. The sort of answer he gave when he wanted everyone to believe a question had already been settled. Rebecca turned to me. Did you know your mother had changed her will? No. Michael exhaled through his nose. I kept my hand flat on the table. I knew she met with you in September. She told me it was about the medical directive. You drove her to my office. She asked me to. And waited outside? In the car. Michael looked toward Aunt Susan as if inviting her to notice how rehearsed that sounded. I heard myself begin. I'm sorry. I should have. Claire's coffee-colored sleeve moved at the edge of my vision. Don't apologize for answering, she said. The words were not gentle. They were almost impatient. That made them easier to hear. I stopped. My mother's pastor shifted in his chair. One of the neighbors studied the tablecloth. Public certainty had entered the room with Michael, but doubt spread differently. It made people avoid one another's eyes. Rebecca tapped the medical report. This assessment is dated September 14th. Eleanor signed the new will on September 16th. Michael folded his arms. Which is precisely the problem. I wasn't asking you. Rebecca faced Claire. Were you present when this assessment was completed? Claire gripped the back of an empty chair. I was working that night. That isn't what I asked. Michael cut in. She signed it. Unless we've decided signatures no longer matter. Claire flinched. There it was again, the small movement of someone standing near a truth she did not want to touch. During my mother's final month, Claire had been the one who noticed when the bedroom lamp was too bright. She knew which pills made Mom nauseated, and which stories she repeated because she loved them, not because she had forgotten telling them. Once, at 2 in the morning, I found Claire labeling freezer containers because Mom was worried I would forget to eat after she was gone. I had trusted her because my mother had. Now she could not answer a simple question. 2 days before the date on the report, Mom had corrected the amount on an electric bill from memory. She had also reminded me that Michael's birthday card was still in the hall drawer. Pain had taken pieces of her attention, but it had not erased the woman who noticed a $6 mistake and an unsigned envelope. Claire? I said. She looked at me. Was my mother confused? Michael pulled out the chair beside him. Daniel. Be careful. I ignored him. Claire pressed her thumb against a split in the wood. Sometimes, she said, after medication, when the pain was bad, not all the time. Rebecca opened the report again. This says she was unable to make consistent decisions. I know what it says. Is it true? Claire glanced at the recipe box. It isn't the whole truth. Michael's chair scraped back. This is absurd. She arrives after the will is read, carrying objects Daniel had unrestricted access to. And now she suddenly questions her own clinical judgment? I didn't ask her to come, I said. Of course not. That would be too obvious. Aunt Susan whispered my name, not as comfort but warning. The familiar pressure returned. Make peace, lower your voice, let Michael finish. For years, he had called that maturity. Our mother had called it keeping the family together. The card remained beneath my hand. Daniel does not know. I read the sentence again. Mom had not written Daniel is innocent. She had written that I did not know. Know what? Rebecca asked Thomas to photograph the front and back of the card. This time Michael did not block him, but he watched the phone as if memorizing every movement. The box stays with me, Rebecca said. I'll arrange a documented inventory tomorrow morning. Claire shook her head. Not tomorrow. Rebecca's expression sharpened. Why? Because someone already searched it. The air conditioner clicked off. Without its low hum, I could hear the neighbor nearest me breathing through her mouth. Michael picked up the medical report and aligned its corners. You can't possibly know that. Claire reached into the box without touching the cards and lifted the narrow wooden divider. A clean rectangle showed beneath it, protected from years of flour and kitchen smoke. Eleanor kept 48 cards, she said. She counted them every Sunday after I organized her medication. Rebecca looked inside. How many are there now? 47. Michael smiled. And I suppose the missing one contains a confession. Claire did not return the smile. It doesn't. Her gaze settled on the medical report in his hands. It contains the reason she started writing things down. Rebecca sealed the recipe box inside a clear evidence bag she found in her briefcase. Michael watched her press the adhesive strip closed. This is theater, he said. Then you should be relieved when the inventory finds nothing. Rebecca wrote the time across the seal and asked Thomas Reed to sign beneath it as a witness. She had revealed a missing card, a compromised medical report, and no explanation for either. I should have demanded one. Instead, I began collecting coffee cups. It was what I did when conflict outgrew me. I cleared plates, folded chairs, found practical work that required no opinion. By the time the last neighbor left, the dining table looked almost normal again. Only the unopened will remained. Rebecca placed it in her case. The reading is suspended until tomorrow. Michael glanced at his watch. I have clients in the morning, then disappoint them. He buttoned his jacket and turned to me. You can still end this quietly. My fingers tightened around 2 stacked saucers. How? Decline the house. We sell it, divide the estate equally, and no one has to argue that Mom was competent. He said it as though he were protecting her. For 1 weak second, I imagined agreeing. The attorney would leave. Claire would take her mistake with her. Aunt Susan would stop looking at me as if grief had exposed something rotten. Michael might even call the decision decent. Then the top saucer slipped. Claire caught it against her coat before it reached the floor. Neither of us let go immediately. Tomorrow, Rebecca said to me, do not sign or promise anything tonight. Michael opened the front door. He doesn't need a night. He needs to remember this was never only his mother. The door closed behind him. I carried the cups into the kitchen. Claire followed with the saucer. You should go, I said. She set it beside the sink. I will. That report gave him the words he needed. I know. Did he ask you to write it? Her gaze dropped to the dish towel hanging from the oven handle. Daniel, that isn't an answer. She nodded once, accepting the correction. No, not exactly. Before I could ask what that meant, Rebecca entered and told Claire not to discuss the report until she had obtained independent counsel. Claire reached into her pocket, placed a folded business card beside the sink, and left without saying goodbye. Her car stayed at the curb for nearly a minute before its headlights moved across the kitchen wall. Rebecca waited until they disappeared. You trust her? I did. That wasn't my question. I turned on the faucet. Cold water struck the cups hard enough to splash my shirt. I don't know. She looked toward the empty space where the recipe box had sat for most of my childhood. Good, she said. Not knowing is safer than deciding too early. After she left, the refrigerator clicked. Pipes shifted behind the walls. Somewhere upstairs, the loose window in Mom's room tapped twice in the wind. I had promised to fix it in August. Michael had promised to find a contractor. Neither one of us had done it. That was the part people never understood about the years I spent caring for her. There had been no single decision to stay, no noble sacrifice. Dad died, Mom needed help with the insurance forms, and I moved into the guest room for what I said would be 6 weeks. 6 weeks became grocery lists taped to the refrigerator, then cardiology appointments, then a plastic organizer with morning and evening compartments. I turned down a supervisory position in Denver because the move came 2 days after one of her hospitalizations. I told my employer the timing was bad. I told Mom the company had changed its plans. Michael called that night from an airport lounge. "You can't keep building your life around emergencies," he said. He was right. That was what made it easy to let him be right about everything else. Michael had always been the son with answers. He chose Dad's rehabilitation center after the stroke. He negotiated the hospital bills. He helped Mom move her investments after Dad died. At family dinners, he explained documents while I carried food from the kitchen. No one assigned us those roles. We repeated them until they looked inherited. When we were boys, Michael used to finish my sentences whenever I hesitated. Adults called us close. By high school, he had learned to correct my stories before I finished telling them. I learned that silence ended the correction faster. Mom noticed. "Let him talk," she would tell me after Michael left. "You know who you are." For years, that sounded like trust. Standing alone in her kitchen, I understood its other meaning. She had asked me to carry the truth privately while Michael carried the version everyone heard. The folded card Claire had left beside the sink was not a business card. It was one of Mom's appointment reminders. Claire had written a phone number on the back and 4 words beneath it. Ask about September 12. September 12th had been a Thursday. I remembered because Mom had insisted on baking Michael's birthday cake even though his birthday was 3 days later. She measured the flour herself, complained that I had bought the wrong vanilla, and recited his office number when I said I could not find it. That evening, Michael arrived without calling. He brought a leather folder and asked me to pick up dinner. I had been gone 40 minutes. When I returned, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table with the recipe box open and the folder closed beside her. Michael was washing a pen beneath the faucet. Blue ink ran over his fingers. "What happened?" I asked. "It leaked." Mom did not look at him. I noticed the untouched cake batter. I noticed her hand resting over the cards. I noticed Michael take the leather folder when he left. What I did not do was ask a second question. The next morning, Mom asked whether Claire could help her correct something in her chart. I told her medical records took time. Michael had already explained that confusion came and went with the medication, and challenging every note would only make the nurses defensive. Mom stared at me for several seconds. "Did he tell you that?" I heard the answer she wanted. I gave her the easier one. He knows how these things work. The memory left me gripping the edge of the sink. Michael had not needed to hide everything from me. Sometimes he only needed to speak first. My phone lit up beside the appointment card. A message from him. "Decline the house tonight. I'll tell everyone you were trying to honor her wishes." My thumb hovered above the keyboard. I typed, "I'm sorry this got out of hand." The sentence looked familiar because I had used versions of it my entire life. I erased it. Then, I photographed Claire's note and sent it to Rebecca. "What happened on September 12th? Her reply came less than a minute later. "Do not contact Michael." I'm checking the date against Eleanor's file. 3 dots appeared again. Then, Daniel. The request to amend her medical record was submitted that morning. I read the message beside the cold sink. The request had been made before the assessment Michael used against me. Mom had known someone was preparing to call her confused, and Claire had known she wanted the record changed. Rebecca opened the evidence bag at 9 the next morning. She recorded the seal before cutting it, then arranged the recipe cards across her conference table in 4 rows. Thomas Reed sat at one end with a bank laptop. I sat opposite Claire. She had brought a lawyer. The woman beside her introduced herself as Marisol Vega and instructed Claire to answer only questions about Eleanor's condition, handwriting, and the physical history of the box. Michael's chair remained empty. Rebecca had emailed him twice. At 9:17, he replied that a client emergency prevented him from attending and that any inspection conducted without him would be challenged. Rebecca printed the message and added it to the file. 47 cards, she said. No one touched them with bare hands. The process was slow enough to feel almost disrespectful. My mother's handwriting had never been orderly. Ingredients climbed into margins. Oven temperatures were corrected in darker ink. Certain cards carried the marks of actual use. Sugar embedded in a crease, tomato sauce near a corner, a crescent of oil where her thumb had rested. Between the instructions, she had written dates. May 6, M. Asked again about investment account. May 19, 8,400 missing. He says transfer correction. June 2. Call bank myself. Thomas entered each date into a spreadsheet. Do those numbers correspond to transactions? Rebecca asked. I can't confirm without authorization from the executor. The executor is Michael. Thomas's mouth tightened. Then I need a court order or his consent. Rebecca made a note. The first 13 cards mentioned nothing financial. Then Claire identified my mother's handwriting on the back of a chicken and dumplings recipe. September 3, Daniel paid property tax. Do not let M call it rent. Heat moved up my neck. I had paid the tax because Mom's checking account had been temporarily frozen after someone entered the wrong password too many times. Michael told me the issue was resolved and promised to reimburse me from the estate account. I had never asked again. Rebecca studied my face. Do you have proof of payment? Probably. Probably isn't useful. The correction landed harder because Michael usually wrapped his criticism in concern. Rebecca simply waited for a real answer. I paid online from my account. I can retrieve the statement. Do it today. Claire's eyes remained on the card. Eleanor worried he would use that against you, she said. Why? Marisol touched Claire's sleeve before she answered. Claire chose her words carefully. Michael told her that living in the house gave you a financial interest in keeping her dependent. The sentence hurt more than the accusation from the night before. Michael had not invented his story after Mom died. He had been placing it around her while she was still alive. I pushed my chair back and walked to the window. Below us, people crossed the courthouse square carrying coffee and document folders. A delivery driver balanced 3 boxes against his chest. Nothing outside had changed because my mother had spent her final months defending me in the margins of recipes. Did she believe him? I asked. Claire did not offer comfort. Sometimes she was afraid he might make other people believe him. I returned to the table. The inventory continued. A card for pot roast listed 4 check numbers. A lemon pie recipe named the last digits of 2 accounts. On the back of a blank card, Mom had written, House papers are not in drawer, where M says. Thomas stopped typing. What? He asked Rebecca to rotate the card toward him. My bank uses a custodial service for original loan documents. If Eleanor believed property papers had been moved, can you check? I can check whether an inquiry exists. I cannot open it. His fingers moved over the keyboard. After entering his credentials, he went still. Someone requested a title verification on August 28th. Rebecca leaned toward the screen. For what purpose? Potential secured lending. I stared at him. There was no mortgage. There isn't one recorded. Then what does that mean? It means someone began asking what the property could support. Claire's chair shifted softly. August 28th was the date on the card I had turned over during the will reading. The check number beneath it began with the same 4 digits Thomas had just read from the inquiry reference. Rebecca photographed both and placed them side by side. Coincidence? She asked. Thomas shook his head. Not one, I would assume. My phone vibrated. Michael. I let it stop. He called again before the next card was photographed. Rebecca held out her hand. I answered and placed the phone in the center of the table. Where are you? Michael asked. Rebecca's office. A pause. I told her not to inspect that box without me. She invited you. This is exactly what I was trying to prevent. Claire brings undocumented material into the house. Rebecca treats it like evidence, and you follow along because someone finally made you feel important. The old shame found its usual place beneath my ribs. I nearly explained that the cards had been sealed, photographed, handled with gloves. Instead, I asked one. Why was there a title inquiry on August 28th? Silence held for 3 seconds. What title inquiry? Thomas wrote something on his legal pad, the one connected to Mom's house. Michael sighed. I reviewed her assets. That was my responsibility. Were you applying for a loan? Don't use words you don't understand. My hand started toward the phone. Claire shook her head once, not to stop me from speaking, to stop me from surrendering the question. I left my hand beside the card. Were you applying for a loan? Michael's voice lost its patient edge. Ask your nurse why mom needed one. The call ended. Every person at the table turned toward Claire. Marisol spoke first. My client will not answer a financial question she cannot verify. Claire swallowed. I didn't know about a loan, but you know why he said that? I said. Her lawyer advised her not to respond. Rebecca returned to the cards. The 47th was my mother's peach cobbler recipe. The paper had softened from years of handling. At the bottom, beneath the baking time, she had drawn a narrow rectangle divided into 4 compartments. My name appeared above it. Daniel does not know. Underneath were 4 dates and 4 amounts. The total was $96,000. Thomas compared the dates with the notes already entered. These are not checks, he said. What are they? I asked. They look like quarterly investment withdrawals. Rebecca examined the card. Can you verify them? Not from here, but I recognize the account format. He closed the laptop and slid it into his case. It belongs to the advisory division where Michael works. Claire's face lost color. Rebecca noticed. You've seen those amounts before. Marisol placed a hand over the nearest card. We're done. Claire stood, but something white slipped from the folder beneath her chair. It was not a recipe card. It was a photocopy of one. Only the bottom half was visible before Marisol picked it up. But I saw my mother's handwriting in the beginning of a sentence. Claire took original. Marisol put the copy back into the folder. I rose. You knew the missing card named you. Claire held my gaze, fear flattening her voice. I knew she wrote about me. Where is the original? She looked toward the closed door as if expecting Michael to be standing behind it. Somewhere he can't destroy it. By noon, everyone at my mother's memorial knew I was being investigated. No investigation had begun. Michael only needed the word. He stood near the church fellowship hall entrance, accepting condolences with one hand and holding a cream-colored legal envelope in the other. Each time someone asked why the will reading had stopped, he lowered his voice before answering. That made people lean closer. I watched the story travel from the coat rack to the coffee urn, then across the room to the tables where women from Mom's Gardening Club arranged slices of pound cake. No one approached me directly. They studied me while pretending to look for chairs. Rebecca had warned me not to discuss the cards, the withdrawals, or the title inquiry until the records could be obtained legally. Repeating any of it would let Michael claim I was spreading accusations to protect an invalid will. So I stood beside the photograph table and said thank you when strangers told me my mother had been a wonderful woman. Michael had no such restriction. He never accused me of a crime. He said he was concerned. He said grief made families vulnerable. He said the court might need to examine whether there had been undue influence. The phrase moved through the hall intact. Undue influence. It sounded cleaner than coercion and more respectable than theft. People could repeat it without feeling cruel. Aunt Susan found me beneath a paper banner made by the church children. Michael says you're refusing to cooperate. Rebecca told both of us not to discuss the estate. Susan glanced toward him. He's discussing your mother. So am I. No, Daniel. You're discussing procedure. She pressed Mom's silver serving spoon into my hand. I had brought it from the house that morning because Susan said the church needed one for the bread pudding. Your brother is trying to keep this from becoming ugly. Across the hall, Michael placed a hand on Pastor Lewis's shoulder and guided him toward the bank representative who had attended the will reading. He was not containing anything. He was choosing the audience. Did he tell you about the money? I asked. Susan's expression changed. What money? Rebecca's warning stopped the rest of the sentence. Michael noticed. He crossed the hall before I could answer. This is exactly why we shouldn't do this here, he said. He had arrived to find me holding a serving spoon and Aunt Susan looking frightened. Somehow, he made himself appear to be the person restoring order. You brought the envelope, I said, because Rebecca served me with notice that the executor's authority may be challenged. He raised it just high enough for Susan to see the law firm's name. After Daniel and Claire conducted their private inspection, Thomas and Rebecca were there, and I wasn't. 3 people nearby had stopped talking. One of Mom's neighbors held a paper cup halfway to her mouth. Michael lowered his voice. Tell Susan you didn't pressure Mom to change her will. The request sounded simple because the trap was not in the answer. If I said no, he would ask why Mom's nurse had declared her unable to make decisions. If I explained Claire's doubt, he would say she changed her story after bringing me hidden evidence. If I mentioned the missing card, he would call it collusion. Tell her, he repeated. I could feel the apology assembling itself. I'm sorry this happened here. I'm sorry Mom's memorial became about us. I'm sorry you're all uncomfortable. Every version gave him the same gift. Responsibility without truth. The serving spoon bent cold against my palm. I won't confess to something I didn't do. Michael's eyebrows rose. He had expected resistance eventually. He had not expected it in front of witnesses. No one asked for a confession. You did. Last night. The neighbor lowered her cup. Pastor Lewis moved closer. Michael smiled, but only at them. Daniel is exhausted. He cared for Mom for years, and I think that closeness made boundaries difficult. There it was. Not a liar, not a thief. A devoted son who had loved incorrectly. Claire entered through the kitchen doors carrying a covered casserole dish. Conversation thinned around her. She stopped when she saw Michael beside me. Marisol was not with her. Michael noticed that too. Miss Bennett, he said, loud enough to widen the circle. Claire set the dish on the nearest table. Not here. I agree. Unfortunately, Daniel has started telling our aunt that money is missing. Susan looked at me as if I had betrayed a confidence she had never received. Claire's hand stayed on the casserole lid. That isn't what he said. Were you listening? I heard enough. Then answer one question. On September 14th, did you sign an assessment stating that Eleanor could not make consistent decisions? Pastor Lewis looked down. The neighbor's paper cup crumpled slightly beneath her fingers. Claire could have said the report was incomplete. She could have told them Mom had requested a correction 2 days earlier. But her lawyer's warning and her own signature stood between intention and speech. I signed it, she said. Michael nodded with practiced sadness. And 2 days later, Daniel benefited from a new will. You know that isn't the whole sequence? Then explain it. Claire opened her mouth. Nothing came. If she admitted the report was unreliable, she exposed herself professionally. If she defended it, she strengthened Michael's accusation. If she mentioned the hidden card, she made both of us look coordinated. Michael let the pause speak for her. Someone behind me whispered. Claire removed her hand from the casserole. Daniel did not ask me to bring the box. But you brought it. Yes. And you removed something from it before he saw it. Her face went still. Rebecca's preservation notice had disclosed that Claire possessed a missing original. Michael did not know what it said, but he did not need to. Answer him, Aunt Susan said. Claire looked at me. Not for rescue, but permission to cause damage. I could not give it. Not in a church hall. Not before counsel had examined the card. Not while Michael controlled every available interpretation. You don't have to answer here, I said. Michael's expression softened. That's what influence looks like. The sentence landed quietly. No one needed him to explain it. I had just protected Claire from answering, and he had turned the act into proof that I controlled her too. Pastor Lewis asked us to take the dispute outside. Michael lifted both hands. I came to honor my mother. Then he opened the cream envelope. But until the court confirms the will, the estate has to be protected. Rebecca entered from the main corridor, already moving toward us. Michael removed a single page. As executor, I'm restricting access to the house, pending an inventory. You don't have unilateral authority to remove an occupant, Rebecca said. Daniel isn't a tenant. He has lived there for 4 years. Without a lease. The gardening club women had stopped cutting cake. Thomas Reed stood near the coffee urn. Susan, Pastor Lewis, Claire, and both neighbors from the will reading watched Michael hold out his hand. The keys. Rebecca told me not to move. Michael kept his palm open. If there is nothing in that house you're trying to hide, this shouldn't be difficult. The old choice returned in a new shape. Fight and look possessive. Comply and let him call compliance innocence. I took the key ring from my pocket. Mom's brass house key hung beside a chipped blue tag she had used since I was 12. Claire stepped forward. Daniel. Wait. Michael turned toward her. Are you advising him now? She stopped. I placed the keys in Rebecca's hand, instead of Michael's. Document them. Rebecca closed her fingers around the ring. It was the first decision I had made all day that belonged entirely to me. It still left me without a home. Michael faced the witnesses. You all saw that I tried to handle this privately. No one corrected him. As I walked out of my mother's memorial, the chipped blue tag flashed between Rebecca's fingers. Behind me, someone asked Michael whether I had always been difficult. He answered before the door closed. Only when Mom tried to say no. The motel room had one chair, one plastic cup, and a window facing the ice machine. I sat on the edge of the bed with my mother's chipped blue key tag in my mind and no key attached to it. Rebecca had kept the ring for documentation. She had also warned me that returning to the house, even legally, would give Michael another scene to use. My clothes, medication, and work laptop were still inside. At 7:30, someone knocked. Claire stood outside holding a paper bag and 2 coffees. Rebecca gave me the room number, she said. You can tell me to leave. I moved away from the door. She entered without taking off her coat. The room was too small for distance, so she created what she could, setting the food on the desk and choosing the chair farthest from the bed. She placed 1 coffee near me. No sugar. I noticed, and resented noticing. You knew what Michael would do at the memorial, I said. I knew what he could do. That distinction seems important to you. It's one of the ways I've been lying to myself. She opened the paper bag. Soup, crackers, a turkey sandwich, and an apple rolled onto the desk. The same kind of food she used to leave beside Mom's bed after difficult treatments. I'm not hungry. You don't have to be. She removed the lid from the soup anyway, then sat with both hands beneath her thighs. Marisol told me not to come. You should start listening to people who tell you the truth. She accepted that without defending herself. For several seconds, the ice machine groaned beyond the wall. Then Claire reached inside her coat and removed a flat archival sleeve. The missing recipe card lay inside it. I did not take it. Where was it? A safe deposit box at the credit union. Since when? 3 days before your mother died. The card was for beef stew. Mom had written the ingredients in blue ink and later added more pepper in pencil. Claire turned the sleeve over. The back carried 6 lines. Sept. 12. Asked to correct chart. Claire took original request. M told her record must stay. She said she would fix it. Sept. 14. Worse words added. Asked Claire why she listened. The last line had been underlined twice. I read it again before looking up. Why did you listen? Claire's shoulders lowered, as if the question removed the final reason to hold herself upright. The assessment on September 14th wasn't mine. It has your signature? I signed it. Then it was yours. She nodded. It was. The word stayed between us. She told me the hospice agency had been short-staffed. A nurse from the previous shift had drafted a cognitive assessment after Mom became disoriented following an increased dose of morphine. Claire had begun her night with 11 patients, 2 medication changes, and a supervisor who warned her that unfinished charts would count against her probationary review. Instead of assessing Mom again, Claire copied the draft into the final report and signed it. She was asleep when I completed it, Claire said. So you didn't know whether it was accurate. I knew it described 1 bad hour as if it were her permanent condition. That isn't the same thing? It isn't. She pressed her palms together until the knuckles whitened. Your mother had already submitted the correction request. I scanned it into the system that morning. That's why Rebecca found the timestamp. Then why wasn't the report corrected? Michael called the agency, and he said he managed her finances and needed a consistent record for an urgent protection issue. The soup released a thin curl of steam between us. You believed him. I wanted to. That answer hurt differently from fear. Claire could have blamed exhaustion, hierarchy, or Michael's polished concern. Instead, she kept going. He had raised money for the hospice program. My supervisor knew him. I was 6 weeks from the end of probation, and my father's rehabilitation bills were already 3 months behind. So you protected your job. Yes, by leaving words in my mother's record that you knew could be false. I did. The second admission came more quietly. And because correcting it would have meant admitting I signed something I hadn't verified. There it was. Not only fear, self-preservation. She had watched my mother struggle to be believed and chosen the version that kept Claire's own life intact. Why take the card? Eleanor showed it to me after she realized the correction had gone nowhere. She said Michael had searched the desk in her bedroom. She wanted me to bring the card to Rebecca. Did you? Claire's chin moved once from side to side. I put it in the safe deposit box. That wasn't what she asked. I know. You didn't protect the evidence. You protected yourself from having to explain it. Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. That's true. My anger wanted something larger from her, a denial I could tear apart, an excuse I could reject. Her agreement gave it nowhere clean to go. I stood and crossed the 2 steps to the window. Outside, a man filled a bucket at the ice machine. He held the lid beneath one arm and caught the cubes that bounced onto the pavement. She trusted you, I said. I know. So did I. Claire's breath caught. That was the first thing I said that made her flinch. She rose and placed the sleeve on the desk. I reported myself this afternoon. I turned. To whom? The agency's compliance officer and the nursing board. Because Michael exposed you? Because I should have done it before he could. You're avoiding the question. She absorbed the correction. Both? She said. I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm afraid of what happens if I don't get there first. For once, the mixed motive sounded more honest than purity would have. She handed me a folded page bearing 2 confirmation numbers. They may suspend me while they investigate. I set it beside the card. Am I supposed to thank you? I'm not asking you to. Forgive you? Not tonight. The answer was so close to what I needed that my anger loosened for one dangerous second. Claire stood within arm's reach. Her coat smelled faintly of rain and the cinnamon gum she chewed during Mom's night shifts. I remembered her catching the saucer, labeling freezer containers, remembering how I drank coffee. Grief, gratitude, and betrayal occupied the same narrow space. My hand lifted before I knew whether I meant to touch her face or ask her to stay. Claire stepped back. Don't. I lowered it. I wasn't. You don't have to explain. She pulled her coat closed. I won't let gratitude become the reason you reach for me. And I won't use caring about you to make what I did smaller. The words left nowhere to hide. Then don't ask me to trust you before I'm ready. I won't. She moved toward the door. Claire, her hand, stopped on the handle. Does Michael know you have the original? He knows it was removed. He doesn't know where I kept it. How much did Rebecca's notice tell him? She faced me again. Only that I preserved an original card, not what it said or where I kept it. Before I could answer, her phone vibrated. She read the screen and went still. What? She turned it toward me. An email from the hospice agency. Effective immediately. Claire Bennett was suspended from patient contact pending an investigation into the alteration and removal of medical records. The complaint had been filed 40 minutes before she reported herself. Michael had reached the board first. At 8 the next morning, my debit card stopped working. The motel clerk ran it twice while a line formed behind me. You may want to call your bank. I paid for another night with the emergency cash Mom used to keep inside an envelope marked furnace. Rebecca had retrieved it with my medication and 3 shirts under a supervised entry order. My work laptop remained in the house. Michael had objected to its removal because it was sitting on a desk purchased with Mom's credit card. By 9, I was using a public computer at the library to tell my supervisor I could not access project files for a second day. He called instead of replying. A client contacted us this morning, he said. He asked whether you were involved in an estate fraud investigation. I closed the browser window even though no one was near enough to read it. There is no investigation into me. Can you document that? The question was fair. I hated him for asking it. Not yet. He moved me off 2 active accounts until the dispute was resolved. He called it a temporary risk measure. Michael would have called it responsible leadership. When the call ended, I had lost my home, access to my money, and enough work to reduce next month's paycheck by almost half. No new evidence had appeared. Only consequences. Rebecca met me at the county courthouse with a folder under one arm and Mom's keyring sealed inside a transparent pouch. The chipped blue tag rested against the brass key. Your checking account isn't frozen by the court, she said. The bank flagged it after someone reported possible commingling with estate funds. Michael, probably. We prove it. We don't guess it. She handed me a list. 4 years of bank statements, property tax confirmation, utility payments, receipts for Mom's medical equipment, proof that my salary had entered an account Michael claimed was partly supported by her money. How much will this cost? Rebecca named a retainer larger than my remaining savings. I folded the list along its center. If I decline the house, does this stop? The will contest might. The allegation that you mishandled Eleanor's money may not. He offered to tell everyone I was honoring her wishes. That is not the same as admitting he lied. The courthouse elevator opened. Claire stood inside with Marisol and a cardboard records box. No one had arranged for us to meet. Claire's suspension had become visible overnight. She wore ordinary clothes instead of navy scrubs, and the empty space where her identification badge usually hung made her look unfinished. Marisol greeted Rebecca. We're submitting the original card and Claire's timeline under seal. Claire held the box closer when 2 deputies passed. Did you eat? She asked me. The question irritated me because she knew the answer. This isn't your shift. Pain crossed her face, but she did not retreat into apology. No, It isn't. The elevator doors began to close. Rebecca stopped them with her folder, and all four of us stepped inside. No one spoke during the descent. In the records office, Claire surrendered the original card. The clerk scanned both sides, assigned an evidence number, and placed it inside a tamper-evident envelope. When Claire released it, her fingers stayed curved as if the card were still there. Marisol asked for a private conference room. The room held a metal table and 5 mismatched chairs. Rebecca spread my financial checklist beside Claire's timeline. Michael knew before the memorial that Claire held an original card, Rebecca said. The preservation notice required us to disclose that much. Claire tightened her grip on the records box. Did the notice disclose where it was kept? No, Rebecca said. It identified the item and ordered all parties not to destroy related records. Michael learned nothing about its contents. Then he was guessing at the memorial, I said. He was controlling the interpretation before anyone else could speak, Rebecca said. She drew a line beneath the preservation notice entry and returned to the medical timeline. Claire opened the records box. Inside were copies of medication logs, shift assignments, Mom's correction request, and the agency's notice of suspension. No secret recording, no final confession, just paper showing who had been present and when. These are all the records I can legally provide, she said. You removed them before you were suspended? Rebecca asked. No. Compliance produced them after my report. Her voice tightened around the last word. I recognized the urge to defend her before anyone had accused her. I kept both hands beneath the table. Rebecca compared the correction request with the medical assessment. The request was scanned at 8:12 in the morning. The negative assessment was finalized 2 days later, at 11:43 at night. Under my login, Claire said. Marisol touched the edge of the box. We are not relitigating that admission. We have to, Claire replied. If I soften it now, she was right. That did not make trust return. Rebecca assigned us separate tasks. Claire would build the medical timeline with her lawyer. I would reconstruct household spending. Neither of us would contact Michael or discuss the case without counsel. For 3 hours, we worked at opposite ends of the table. Claire identified medication changes by color code. I downloaded statements and marked every expense connected to Mom. When my hands began to shake from hunger, a packet of crackers appeared beside my elbow. Claire did not mention it. I ate them without thanking her. At 2, Rebecca left to file an emergency petition restoring my access to personal property. Marisol went to make a call. Claire and I remained with the records between us. You can stay at my apartment, she said. The couch folds out. I kept highlighting insurance payments. No, it would save money. It would also let Michael say I moved in with the woman changing her testimony for me. I know. That isn't the only reason. The highlighter stopped at the edge of a pharmacy charge. Claire waited. I'm not leaving one damaged relationship by turning you into shelter, I said. And I'm not going to confuse needing somewhere to sleep with choosing you. Her hand closed around a red pen. I wasn't asking you to choose me. Part of you was. She considered denying it. Then she set the pen down. Part of me wanted to know you were somewhere safe. Those aren't always different things. They aren't. The boundary hurt both of us, which was how I knew it was real. When Rebecca returned, she carried a report from the county recorder and a preliminary response from Thomas. The title inquiry had not ended with evaluation. 2 weeks later, an application had been submitted to use Mom's house as collateral for a business line of credit. The loan had never closed, so no mortgage appeared on the public record, but the application carried supporting documents, a proposed amount of $250,000, and an electronic acknowledgement attributed to Eleanor Mercer. Can Michael borrow against a house he doesn't own? I asked. Not legally, Rebecca said. Then the application is useless. She placed a second page over my bank statements. Not if someone plans to make it look as though Eleanor authorized it. At the bottom was a contact email for the proposed borrower. It did not belong to Mom. It was an address Michael had created using her name. The handwriting examiner did not call the signature a forgery. Rebecca read the preliminary opinion twice before placing it on the conference table. The electronic acknowledgement on the loan application appears consistent with Eleanor's known signature. I stared at the scanned page. Mom's name curved beneath the statement authorizing the house as collateral. The final R leaned slightly upward, the way it did on birthday cards and pharmacy receipts. Michael had not needed to imitate her badly. He had found a signature that looked real. So she approved the loan? I asked. It means the examiner cannot exclude her as the signer. Rebecca's distinction offered no comfort. Across the table, Marisol closed Claire's medical timeline. Claire had been suspended for 4 days. The nursing board had scheduled an interview. Her agency had stopped her pay, and the rehabilitation center caring for her father had sent another overdue notice. Thomas Reed, joined by video from the bank's compliance office. The application was submitted through Michael's advisory portal, he said. The email verification went to the address created in Eleanor's name. The electronic signature came from a device previously used to access her investment account. Which device? Rebecca asked. We can't determine that from the preliminary log. Michael's office? Possibly. Also, Eleanor's house. The answer gave him exactly what he needed. I had lived in the house, knew Mom's passwords, and paid bills from her kitchen table. Every fact that made me useful as a caregiver could be rearranged into evidence that I had exploited her. Rebecca's assistant entered with a courier envelope. Inside was Michael's proposed settlement. He would withdraw the will, challenge, and allow me to inherit the house. In exchange, I would agree that Mom had authorized all financial transactions, release Michael from claims related to his management of her assets, and state that Claire had acted independently when she removed the recipe card. He gives me the house, I said. He stops trying to take what the will already gives you, Rebecca corrected. And Claire? Marisol answered. Claire read the page without touching it. Take it. I turned toward her. You haven't even… I understand it. It says you removed evidence without telling anyone. I did. It lets him keep saying the medical report was your failure alone. Part of it was, Marisol told her to stop volunteering conclusions. Claire continued. You keep the house. Your account gets released. You may get your work back. And Michael gets $96,000 and a $250,000 application erased from the story. Not erased. Unchallenged. The precision sounded like punishment. Before I could answer, my phone began filling with messages. Aunt Susan had posted a statement in the family group. I have tried to remain neutral, but Daniel and his nurse are using Eleanor's private writings to accuse Michael while refusing to acknowledge that Eleanor signed the documents herself. Grief does not excuse destroying a good man's reputation. Below it was a photograph of Claire entering my motel room with food. The image had been taken from inside a parked car. Michael did not need to accuse us of an affair. Susan's final sentence did it for him. Claire's chair struck the wall as she stood. He had someone following me. Marisol took the phone and began capturing screenshots. My cousin replied first. So this was about the house and the nurse? Then one of Mom's neighbors replied that she had known there was more to the story. My thumb moved toward the reply field. I wanted to explain the soup, the original card, the boundary Claire had imposed. I wanted to list timestamps until no one could mistake kindness for conspiracy. Rebecca took the phone from my hand. Anything you write becomes an exhibit. Silence becomes agreement. Then choose where your answer matters. The advice was sound. It still felt like every other instruction to let Michael speak first. Thomas cleared his throat through the laptop speaker. There is another issue. He shared a document on screen. A transfer instruction directing the proposed loan proceeds into an account belonging to Mercer Strategic Holdings, Michael's company. The instruction included a secondary notation, estate obligation restructuring. What does that mean? I asked. Thomas enlarged the phrase. It suggests the borrower intended to characterize the company's obligation as Eleanor's. Rebecca leaned closer. Could that transfer happen if the loan never closed? No. But the supporting package could be reused. If another lender accepted it after her death, the estate might appear to owe the company's debt. Michael had not only prepared to borrow against Mom's house, he had prepared language that would make his failing company look like her burden. The dead could not dispute an accounting entry. Neither could a woman whose medical record said she was confused. Claire sat down slowly. That's why he needed my assessment to stay. No one answered. She turned toward me. There's something else. Marisol closed her eyes. Claire, he has to know before he signs anything. Her fingers found a loose thread at the cuff of her sweater. On September 12th, after Eleanor gave me the correction request, Michael came to the house. I led him into her room while she was sleeping. The words tightened the air around the table. Why? He said he needed her medication list for an insurance form. You left him alone? For 15 minutes. I remembered the bedroom desk Mom said had been searched. Did he have the leather folder? Yes. Why didn't you tell us? Because I told the agency investigator 2 days ago. and they warned me that admitting an unauthorized visitor had access to patient's room could be treated as another violation. So you waited again? Yes. The word did not need decoration. Was the recipe box in her room? No. But her identification folder was. Mom kept copies of her driver's license, social security card, and signed insurance forms inside that desk. Michael could have taken a genuine signature from any of them. Claire had given him the opportunity. She had also hidden that fact until the settlement placed her silence at a price. I pushed the agreement away. I can't keep learning the truth after it becomes useful to you. I know. Do you? Her face tightened, but she did not ask me to understand. Rebecca sent everyone out except me. When the door closed, she placed a pen beside the settlement. Legally, this is the safest outcome available today. I pictured the motel bill, my reduced paycheck, the frozen debit card, and Mom's key hanging inside a plastic evidence pouch. Signing would restore the shape of my old life. Michael would tell the family the dispute had been a misunderstanding. I could stop paying strangers to prove I had loved my mother correctly. The pen rolled when my hand touched the table. If I refuse, could we lose the house? Yes. Could Claire lose her license anyway? She could. Could Michael still avoid criminal charges? He could. 3 honest answers. None of them told me what to do. I uncapped the pen. Mom's recipe card returned to me, not the amounts or account numbers, but the sentence she had written beneath them. Daniel does not know. She had protected me with ignorance. Michael was offering to protect me the same way. Keep the house. Do not ask whose debt was buried beneath it. I placed the cap back on the pen. If we fight only for the will, he'll say she signed everything else. Rebecca nodded. Then what are we fighting for? I turned the settlement face down. Her right to have known what she was signing. Outside the conference room, Claire stood alone beside the water fountain. Marisol had moved to the far end of the corridor to make a call. Claire did not approach me. I'm not signing, I said. Relief and fear crossed her face together. Because of what I told you? In spite of when you told me. I walked past her toward the elevator. Rebecca called from behind us. Thomas found the device. We returned to the laptop. The electronic acknowledgement had come from a tablet registered to Mom's house. Its activity log showed the signature at 9:16 p.m. on September 12th. At that exact time, Mom's medication record showed she was asleep. Claire had signed that entry too. Michael arrived with Aunt Susan and no lawyer. That was his first mistake. His second was smiling when he saw the recipe box. Rebecca had placed it at the center of the conference table inside its evidence bag. The original missing card remained sealed with the county clerk. Beside them sat the loan application, the device log, Mom's medication record, and my rejected settlement. Thomas Reed occupied one end of the table with 2 compliance officers. Rebecca sat beside me. Susan chose the chair closest to Michael. Claire was not there. Marisol had advised her to remain available by phone because the nursing board investigation made her presence easy to misrepresent. I was relieved. If the truth worked only when Claire stood beside me, Michael could still call it her story. Thomas began by explaining that the meeting was not a criminal hearing. The bank was reviewing unauthorized use of customer information, potential misrepresentation in a credit application, and the movement of funds from Mom's investment account. Michael leaned back. Then Daniel shouldn't be here. The proposed collateral belongs to the estate he may inherit, Rebecca said. May inherit. Assuming the will survives. He turned towards Susan before continuing. My brother lived with our mother for 4 years. He had her passwords, her tablet, her mail, and unrestricted access to the house. Now he produces handwritten notes and asks everyone to ignore documents carrying her actual signature. Susan folded her hands over her purse. The old Daniel would have answered every accusation separately. I would have explained the passwords, the tablet, the property tax, and the recipe cards until Michael found the weakest sentence. This time I let him finish. Thomas displayed the electronic signature log. The acknowledgement was submitted at 9:16 p.m. on September 12th from a tablet registered at Eleanor's address. Michael shrugged. Which proves someone in the house used it. Were you in the house that evening? Rebecca asked. I visited my mother frequently. Were you there that night? I don't maintain a diary. Rebecca placed a parking receipt beside the log. It had been recovered from an expense report Michael submitted to his company. The garage was 2 blocks from Mom's house. The timestamp was 8:31 p.m. Michael barely glanced at it. I stopped by. I was picking up dinner, I said. Convenient. Claire's shift log places you in Mom's bedroom while she was asleep. His smile remained, but one corner reached its position late. Claire Bennett is under investigation for falsifying medical records and removing patient property. If she told you the sky was blue, I'd recommend looking outside. He had prepared that line. I could hear the polish on it. Thomas moved to the investment withdrawals. 4 transfers totaling $96,000 had entered an internal holding account before reaching Mercer Strategic Holdings. Michael uncrossed his legs. Those were temporary liquidity movements. Authorized by whom? Thomas asked. Our mother. Where's the authorization? You have her signature. On an application that never funded. Not on these transfers. Michael tapped one finger against the table. She understood that my company's stability protected the estate. Susan turned toward him. You told me the money never left her account. He did not answer her. He addressed the compliance officers instead. My mother made informal decisions. Daniel knows that. But now that he has found a nurse willing to revise the medical history, every ordinary family arrangement is being recast as fraud. There was the story he had built. Claire was corrupt. Mom was inconsistent. I was dependent. Michael alone was competent enough to interpret all of us. Rebecca slid the settlement across the table. If Eleanor authorized everything, why did you offer Daniel the house in exchange for releasing claims about the transfers? To end a family dispute. Why require him to state that Claire acted alone? Because she did. Acted alone in what? Michael's finger stopped. Rebecca had not specified the missing card, the chart, or the loan application. He recovered quickly. In manufacturing this spectacle, Thomas opened an image of Mom's correction request. Eleanor disputed the cognitive assessment before it was finalized. Did you know that? I knew Claire took the original request. No one moved. Rebecca's voice lowered. The original request was never removed. Michael looked at her. She continued. It was scanned into the hospice system and retained there. Claire removed a recipe card referring to the request. No one outside this investigation has ever confused those 2 documents. Susan's purse slipped from her lap and struck the carpet. Michael looked toward the sealed card. Not at Rebecca. Not at me. At the one object he had insisted was meaningless. You've coached her, he said. The words came too fast. His prepared calm fractured around them. Thomas paused the recording secretary and asked Michael how he knew Claire had possessed the correction request rather than only the card. Michael stood. I'm not submitting to an interrogation designed by my brother. One compliance officer asked him to sit down. He remained standing. Daniel has spent his entire life waiting for someone else to rescue him. First our mother, now Claire. He couldn't manage a mortgage, much less an estate. My pulse beat against the collar of my shirt. The insult was familiar enough to feel like an instruction. Stay seated. Let the capable brother define what capability means. I stood too. You're right about one thing. Michael's attention returned to me. I waited. Rebecca did not interrupt. I saw you take folders into Mom's room. I heard you explain her own accounts to her as though she were a child. When she asked me whether her medical record could be corrected, I repeated your answer instead of asking why she was afraid. Susan stared at the table. I continued before shame could turn into an apology. I made silence look like trust because confronting you would have cost me the version of this family I wanted to keep. Michael gave a dismissive laugh. So, this is confession after all? Yes. Just not yours. The laugh stopped. I failed her by not asking a second question. Claire failed her by signing words she hadn't verified. Mom failed herself when she hid the truth in a box instead of saying it where everyone could hear. My hand rested beside the evidence bag without touching it. But none of those failures gave you permission to take her money, use her identity, or turn her confusion after medication into a permanent version of who she was. Michael's jaw shifted. You can't prove I took anything. The bank can determine that. Then why are you here? To stop you from deciding what my silence means. He looked toward Susan. She did not rescue him. For the first time during the meeting, he addressed me without an audience in his voice. You will lose the house. Maybe. The legal fees will consume what's left. They might. Claire will lose her license, and when this is over, she will blame you. The attempt landed because part of me feared it. I did not pretend otherwise. That will be hers to say. Michael picked up the settlement. Sign this, and you keep what Mom wanted you to have. I took the document from him. Then I tore only the signature page in half. Not the whole agreement. Rebecca would need the rest preserved. Mom didn't leave me a house so I could help you bury her beneath it. Michael reached for the evidence bag. Thomas pulled it away. The movement was small, but it emptied the last of Michael's control from the table. Those cards don't establish where the money went, he snapped. No, Thomas said. Michael looked toward the compliance officers as if he had only now understood they were no longer an audience he could manage. Michael sat down. No answer arrived. Thomas ended the meeting and informed him that the bank was freezing the internal accounts connected to the transfers and referring the application to its fraud unit. That was not a conviction. It did not restore Mom's money or Claire's license. It did not make Susan apologize. But Michael could no longer control the room. As Rebecca gathered the documents, he spoke without looking at me. You destroyed this family over a house. I returned Mom's recipe box to the center of the table. You didn't steal the house first, Michael. He raised his eyes. You stole her right to be believed. The bank returned my debit card before it returned my mother's house. The fraud unit froze the accounts connected to Michael's company and referred the loan application to federal investigators. Rebecca warned me that an investigation was not a conviction and a frozen account was not recovered money. Michael resigned as executor. He did not apologize. Through his attorney, he continued to insist that Mom had approved temporary transfers and that any errors resulted from informal family arrangements. Aunt Susan sent me one message. I wish none of this had happened. She did not say she believed me. I did not ask her to. The probate court recognized Mom's will after Michael withdrew his challenge, and the bank rejected the financial documents he had submitted. The house became mine, but keeping it required selling the back portion of the property to cover legal expenses, delayed taxes, and repairs. The apple tree Dad had planted stood on the land that was sold. I watched surveyors tie orange ribbon around its trunk and understood that winning could still remove things you loved. My employer restored one account and reassigned the other permanently. Some clients returned, one did not. At the grocery store, a woman from Mom's church changed aisles after seeing me. Pastor Lewis called twice. I answered the second time. He apologized for asking me to leave the memorial instead of asking Michael to stop. His apology was specific, which made it harder to dismiss and impossible to use as proof that everything had been repaired. Accepted, I told him. Not erased. Claire's nursing license was suspended for 6 months. She was required to complete supervised practice, documentation training, and an ethics review before returning to patient care. The board's report stated that she had failed to verify an assessment, delayed correcting a patient record, and removed personal property without authorization. It also stated that she had later preserved evidence and reported her own conduct. Both versions were true. For nearly 6 weeks, Claire and I spoke only through our attorneys. There were no late-night messages, no grateful confession after the bank meeting, no promise waiting conveniently at the end of the investigation. I moved back into the house alone. The first night, I carried my suitcase upstairs and stopped outside Mom's bedroom. Her door was open. Rebecca's inventory labels still marked the desk drawers, and a pale rectangle showed where her medication chart had hung. I closed the door without entering. In the kitchen, the recipe box sat inside a cardboard evidence carton. The bank no longer needed it. The county clerk had released the original missing card after making certified copies. Rebecca offered to store everything at her office. I brought the box home. Then I left it inside the carton for 3 weeks. Knowing the truth did not make the object gentle again. One Saturday, I removed it and wiped the flour from the hinges. I did not sand away the black burn mark or replace the warped divider. The damage belonged to its history as much as Mom's handwriting did. I returned 48 cards to their places. The 49th was blank. I had bought it myself. Claire came to the house on the first cold evening in November. She stood on the porch, wearing the same navy coat she had worn to the funeral. Her hair was shorter, and a temporary badge from a supervised care program hung from her pocket. Rebecca said the property transfer was finished, she said. Yesterday, she glanced toward the driveway, where the old boundary fence had already been removed. I'm sorry about the tree. So am I. Neither of us tried to turn the loss into a lesson. I stepped aside. Claire entered slowly, as though the house might remember everything she had done inside it. The chipped blue tag hung beside the door again. When her sleeve brushed the keys, the brass struck the wall. My shoulders tightened before I could stop them. For 1 second, I expected Michael to walk in, carrying a folder and an explanation everyone would accept. Claire noticed. She did not tell me I was safe. She waited until I took my hand off the door. In the kitchen, 2 bowls sat beside a pot of stew. You cooked? She asked. I followed instructions. That isn't always the same thing. It was the closest either of us came to a joke. Claire saw the recipe box on the counter but did not touch it. "How is your father?" I asked, still angry that rehabilitation has rules. "How is work?" Humbling. Her attention returned to me. "How are you?" The easy answer waited. "Fine. Better." Moving on, I placed 2 spoons beside the bowls. "I still hear Michael's voice before I answer certain questions." Claire nodded. "I still check every chart 3 times because I don't trust the person who signed that report." "Do you mean yourself?" "Yes." There was no clean reply to that. We ate at Mom's kitchen table. Claire did not praise the stew, but she finished it. Halfway through dinner, a car slowed outside. My spoon stopped against the bowl. The headlights passed. Claire continued eating. She did not look toward the window or pretend not to notice me listening. Afterward, I opened the recipe box and removed the blank card. On one side, I had written the ingredients for the stew. The measurements were uneven, and I had crossed out the cooking time twice. On the back, I had written the date. Nothing else. I placed it in front of Claire. She read it and traced the edge without lifting the card. "Is this forgiveness?" "No." I moved the empty bowl toward the sink. "It's dinner. Some people do not take your life by force. They change its meaning one careful sentence at a time until even your silence appears to belong to them. Taking your story back does not erase what happened. Sometimes it only means answering in your own voice while your hands are still shaking. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to reclaim the truth about your own life? And if you want more stories like this, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.